morning, noon, evening or night, depending when you're watching this video. My name is Alegende and welcome back to World of Tanks and the greatest of games, where we feature some of the best moments of some great games. Starting off, we got Reconqueror in his Minotauro playing on Mannheim Lane, and of course he is going to get up close and personal in the bottom right corner of the map. And in his approach, he doesn't waste shots until he gets into a good position close enough to brawl. The gun handling on the move of the Minotauro isn't the greatest, so of course chances are higher that he would miss and, well, might have got a return shot in, already losing him some HP. He really gets close to the Progetto and gets a bit of hesitation on the 268 version 4. It does seem that he could pen the tank from this side. However, he might be aware that he is in fact firing premium heat rounds that could easily be absorbed by the tracks and side skirts of the object. So good awareness on that part, instead going for the polar snipe. And what he also greatly does at this position, he noticed that his gun depression is a bit of a limitation, but then he wiggles a bit around on his position in order to gain more gun depression, just to get some downhill ground at this very location in order to utilize more gun depression. But the boring high armor TD engagement continues for quite a while, until he decides to take some risk to go out of that Mexican standoff and pushes that leopard. He does take some damage in doing so, but gets himself in a far more favorable position, that way where the 268 cannot reach him. And now getting closer to the motion, targeting the weak cheeks of the motion, makes this brawl quite an easy challenge, and is eventually, throughout the large amount of hit points, able to destroy him as well. And with the motion gone, every enemy tank on that flank has been dealt with, so they can move up further. However, Mannheim Line has the amazing feature where you can only traverse further through a little bottleneck where enemies can snipe you from multiple angles. Although Reconqueror makes the best out of the situation, getting some return fire in, but honestly can take full advantage of his firepower at this distance. You can only do something effective again when the object pushes in closer and TDs aren't backing him up. But where would those TDs be then? Well, after that engagement, Reconqueror finally returns to defend his own base, but in the process answers my question as the Death Star was trying to outflank him, which Rico did not expect by the looks of it, since he was a little bit slow on the reaction. Without more low rolls, he can kill the Death Star with his final 2 shots in the magazine, but bounces one and also the last one. And what proceeds is what is commonly known as the Tank Destroyer Dance of Death. 2 non-fully traversable turreted vehicles trying to turn around quicker than the other. However, the reload time of the Minotauro's clip is in fact quicker than the reload of the Death Star. But with the short reload of the entire magazine comes an unusual long intra-clip reload in which the Death Star will definitely be reloaded but cannot find a penning place on the Minotauro's front, or well, was ammo wrecked during that engagement. Nevertheless, Rico did everything right after bouncing off his previous clip to increase the odds of his survival. But he isn't done as the T-28 appears but bounces the front, after which Rico has enough time to kill him. And with the G-Sword gone, Rico spots and kills the final 2 SPGs. So we saw quite the effective game with 8 kills, over 7,000 damage, nearly 3,000 blocked and also over 3,000 spotted, getting almost 30,500 combined damage. But we saw him being most effective at close range, where you could easily outrate the enemy by using his superior armor and quick damage output, with a relatively small interlude period where he reloaded his entire magazine. Honestly, on this map I will almost always try another route to go further towards the enemy base from this direction, but I think in this scenario it was best for Reconqueror to hold this position. Although if the object would have been more passive, he had to turn around at some point to counter the flanking maneuver of the Death Star. But luckily the enemies were only pushing in one by one at the time, concluding towards this excellent result. Next up, we are creating some more distance between us and the enemy tanks as we are watching MPNL playing in his Emil 1 on the map Murovanka against tier 9. And since he is the lower tier heavy tank, he knows his position to be more of a role of a support heavy tank, keeping himself at mid-range where he can still be effective, peaking with his full gun depression, in which way he is already able to get multiple shots in. However, after seeing multiple allies die and the enemies advancing further, he correctly falls back to the new mid-range hold down position, and not a moment too soon, as the contradictions had already a line of fire at him. So from his new position he accomplished more of the same as on his first position, being the excellent support heavy tank, giving his top tier teammates a helping hand. And with his platoon mate TGG in the AMX CDA in the back, they created what is called a multi-level engagement. Although I referred more times to a triangular positioning, with 1 point at the front, aka the top tier heavies, and the 2 different angles with support fire lines towards the front. Unfortunately, at some point the enemies do rush in so aggressively that only one Conqueror remains at the front, but with those extra lines of fire that MPNL and TGG occupied, they kill 5 out of the 8 pushing enemy tanks, while the enemy team kills 3 out of the 4 defending tanks. And with less tanks for the enemies to focus on, the higher kill percentage doesn't make a better result for the enemy team, as they lose more hit points and tanks in that exchange. And now that the heat on the 1-2 line has cooled down a bit, MPNL focuses his attention to the other flank, where yet another triangular position is being created. Now with the Shitbutk TVP at the front, mostly as a spotter, MPNL alongside his other platoon mate Sidder 1 in his AMX AC in the back, countering the enemy advances yet again. And we see that being into 2 different triangular positions will accumulate you a lot of damage, as MPNL already achieved over 3,500 damage. This quite central position is a very effective one in order to exert your support. It's not more like a triangle anymore, it's more like a bow tie or something like that. 2 triangles connected by the central position in which MPNL is currently at. And with no enemies left on the entire east side of the map, MPNL can push forwards and bully the G-Saw away. Unfortunately, as he moves up, he gets caught out by the TS6. He really should have turned to the right to get a building between him and the TS, but luckily absorbs a shot in his tracks that keeps him alive. After that, the battle concludes with him traversing more carefully, but by doing that only getting one more shot into the Waffenträger. A point of improvement that we have seen from MPNL before, and that is his offensive tempo being either too fast or too slow. Either receiving more damage than is necessary or dealing less damage in return because he is falling behind. But less damage in the end wasn't really a big issue, as he still accumulated over 4000 damage due to his excellent insight to keep his distance and falling back to stay at distance. He fulfilled his role as the support heavy tank with great success, alongside his platoon mates, who also get a shout out for this replay, creating the backline of the triangular formation. It could be just by coincidence instead of communicated within the platoon, but these are the formation that you want to have with this platoon setup. Although against higher tiers you do need to let your other top tier teammates occupy the upfront position. So we have seen close quarters combat at short distances, we have seen some support role being fulfilled at mid-range distance. Let's create even more distance as I am playing in my G Destroyer on Sand River. As a light tank, of course, you need to keep your distance. Optimally, you want to be able to spot the enemy tanks just at the border at your spotting range, in which you can quickly react to fall back to avoid being spotted yourself. So playing it far away and safely spotting a few enemy tanks can be fulfilling for just a short while. But at some point you do need to reposition towards another location if nothing else happens and you do not spot much else anymore. And again, if in the one position nothing happens all as well for a while, I can use the relative speed of the tank to reposition back and forwards towards different parts of the map. Especially when I know I got some support driving in front of me. However, for the time being, I am acting more like the support vehicle from behind as long as I am able to get some kill secures. Which might get misinterpreted as kill steals, but but now that's not really an issue, right? So right here, getting some poor interaction between me and the Cromwell. I might have returned way earlier from that engagement, but it's a big deal that I was able to eventually get rid of the Cromwell, now only being the T-52 left that can be a nuisance to me with its speed. And when I get a glimpse of the T-52, I also full prioritize his death. Even though I could very well be shot down from this position, but luckily I pulled back quickly enough and also getting one final nice round into the Hellcat. And now against the KV2, two important key elements: distance and quick cover. In that engagement, the KV2 had to be extremely lucky to get a quick snapshot off, since I gave him so little time to react. Because of the distance, I was spotted relatively late in my clip unload and also being close to cover to hide behind. Quickly able to accelerate behind solid cover. And once again, from a different angle, using distance against the now driving away KV2, so he doesn't spot me at all. Now I know this position is safe, so I take my time to pre-aim right in the open for my next salvo. After that, I'm trying to get another angle on the KV2, but after spotting another one shot, my next move is already decided. Quickly getting into the position to engage the T-150 and also spotting and shutting down the artillery with a nice fire. Now I still carefully crest the ridge, expecting the KV2, but the moment he gets spotted down with his body, I can go further with more confidence. Still being a bit reserved for the Hellcat, for which I made sure to have a bit of solid cover between me and the Hellcat. However, after a short while, I already forget the Hellcat a little bit and getting a bit trigger happy for seeing the one-shot KV2. Not fully aiming during my intra-clip reload keeps the KV2 alive by bouncing off a couple of shots of his turret. And also making a suboptimal play by pulling back while the Hellcat can in fact hit me. Nevertheless, in one final lucky moment, the Hellcat was already occupied with our VK and gives me time to clip him down. Now against a 2 versus 2 because our other G destroyer, well, I don't know what he's doing. He is on his own adventure. So I finally am able to eventually kill the one shot from above. So against the final KV2, it is guessing a bit more where he is, but he is in a crossfire between me and the MT25. So as long as I can get him spotted, he is kinda helpless down there. And as the MT25 can shoot him again, he turns his attention to him so I can quickly finish him off as well. So fun fact, this game is actually my new XP record with the total of 154 base experience. But for the most part, in this battle didn't feel XP record worthy. Sure, I got some good damage in this tank against high tier tanks. I think that mostly had to do with my great engagements against those final few KV2s, who were at too great of the distance to fire back at, or I was quickly moving into cover again and again. Next to that, actively hunting down some of the one-shots was also a key element to increase my total XP earnings. However, it was also on those moments that I took quite some risk in order to kill those one-shots. But then again, high risk, high reward does sound like an XP record game after all. And with that, that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Laters!